guardianas del mar. Lo que queremos es cuidar el ambiente, los animales y la gente. Ya no queremos verlos sufrir, lo que queremos es verlos vivir. El medio ambiente en equilibrio con la gente, porque el futuro depende del presente. El mar nos da paz, el mar nos da comida, el mar es hogar, el mar deja las ballenas brillar. Somos los guardianes y guardianas del mar. Lo que queremos es cuidar el ambiente, los animales y la gente, porque el futuro depende del presente. ¿Cómo podemos cuidar el mar? El plástico podemos evitar y las redes no olvidar. Para los animales no enredar. Rechaza, reduce, reutiliza y recicla.
Para cuidar el mar,
Rechaza, reduce, reutiliza y recicla.
la vida preservar.
Rechaza, reduce, reutiliza y recicla.
Para cuidar el mar,
Rechaza, reduce, reutiliza y recicla. Por un futuro azul. Somos los guardianes y guardianas del mar. Lo que queremos es cuidar el ambiente, los animales y la gente, porque el futuro depende del presente. El mar nos da paz, el mar nos da comida, el mar es hogar, el mar deja las ballenas brillar. Somos los guardianes y guardianas del mar. Lo que queremos es cuidar el ambiente, los animales y la gente, porque el futuro depende del presente. Cuidar el ambiente, los animales y la gente, porque el futuro depende del presente. Somos los guardianes y guardianas del mar. Lo que queremos es cuidar el ambiente, los animales y la gente, porque el futuro depende del presente.
Bien, súper, gracias, genial.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Day 2 of the Nature for Life Hub. I'm Kate Oren, and I'm your guide today. What a beautiful way to start our day together, right? That song, Guardianas y Guardianas del Mar, by the incredibly talented Maf Etula, perfectly captures the essence of what we're here to discuss, how we can all play a role in preserving our natural world. That song reminds us that the sea gives us peace, food, and a home, but it also depends on us to protect it. This powerful message is at the heart of today's conversations as we explore the deep connections between our actions and the well-being of our planet. Today, we'll talk about how we can rewrite the invisible finance rules that define our world and invest in a nature-positive economy. Think of our journey as a roadmap, where every step is a chance to align our economy with the health of the planet. We're moving toward a future where business success, and protecting nature go hand in hand. Here's a reminder of why it's crucial for businesses to rethink their impact on the environment and how we all need to take action.
You know the story of the bee? How if this one tiny creature was gone, our food systems would follow. And us, too. It's not just bees we depend on. It's trees, it's oceans, it's everything. Everything we make and that makes our society and economy is made possible by the world's ecosystems. So when we destroy nature, we are destroying ourselves. Thanks to us humans, the world has lost almost 70% of its wildlife in the last 50 years. Our home planet's life support systems are hanging by a thread. Not only can this not go on, it needs to be reversed. But there's good news too. Regeneration is happening by governments and communities, but they can't do it alone. Every business needs to play a role. Measure your impacts, understand your dependencies, create a strategy to change how you do business to damage less, and fund ways to make good what is gone. Already, the world's business leaders think this way, but action needs everyone. Will you join us?
What a powerful reminder of our interconnectedness with nature. As we move forward, we'll explore practical steps that every company can take to stop and reverse nature's loss. Next, we'll hear from Business for Nature, outlining 4 essential actions for companies to align their practices with a nature-positive economy.
Every single company needs to contribute to halting and reversing nature loss by 2030. There are 4 high-level actions that every single company can take right now. 1, assess their most material impacts and dependencies on nature. 2, commit to setting science-based targets on nature. 3, transform their business operations. And 4, disclose on all of the above. Investors need the information, regulators need the information, consumers need it to make better informed decisions. To support companies as they embark on their journey, we have developed with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the World Economic Forum a set of 12 sector-specific actions that companies can take. It cuts through the complexity and identifies what are the top impacts, what are the top dependencies in a specific sector, and what are the priority actions each company can take as they contribute to halting and reversing nature loss. Every company also needs to have a strategy, a forward-looking plan for how they are going to contribute to this nature-positive economy. The It's Now for Nature campaign is a joint and global effort to scale and speed up business action by 2030. And it centers around companies having a strategy for nature. We have a nature strategy handbook available in multiple languages that will help equip companies to ask the right questions at the board level to know what elements are important as you develop and publish nature strategies, and then submit them to nowfornature.org so that they will be part of a growing momentum to drive further much needed business action on nature, starting right now.
That was a powerful call to action from Business for Nature. It's clear that companies have an incredible opportunity to take the lead in reversing nature loss. Financial institutions are crucial to this transformation, so it's important to incorporate transparency into their financial activities. Let's now explore how Natural Business Intelligence, a business and ecology consultancy, does just that, and how it helps businesses manage their assets in a way that's both profitable and environmentally responsible. Let's take a closer look now at how this works.
In today's fast-changing world, nature-positive investments are more important than ever. At NBI, Natural Business Intelligence, we help investment funds and businesses include ecological integrity in their strategies by integrating ecological due diligence to the process. We support asset managers by giving them a deep understanding of ecological impacts, making sure investments are both profitable and environmentally responsible. We follow top industry frameworks like the Task Force on Nature Relation Financial Disclosures, TNFD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, the Science Based Targets for Nature, and the Global Reporting Initiative. By considering nature-related risks and opportunities in our decisions and following TNFD, CSRD, SBTN, and GRI standards, we help funds and companies make smart choices that protect biodiversity and ecosystem services. This approach not only supports a nature-positive future, but also boosts the long-term value of their investments. Investing in sustainable land use can lead to strong returns while promoting environmental care. In a recent ecological due diligence assessment over 107 hectares NBI performed, we provided the ecological baseline and the management plan, helping to assess potential environmental risks and explore management options. This project showed that focusing on ecology can lead to investments that are resilient, profitable, and positive for nature. At NBI, we are dedicated to transforming the investment landscape. By helping investment funds and companies adopt nature-positive strategies, we make sure financial growth supports the transition to a nature-positive, net-zero, and fair economy. Our approach combines throughout ecological assessments with financial analysis, following top industry frameworks like TNFD, CSRD, SBTN, and GRI standards. This gives us a well-rounded approach to sustainable investments. We strongly believe that by directing financial flows towards practices that protect biodiversity and ecosystem health, we can also boost economic returns.
Businesses are making remarkable progress towards a nature-positive economy. Now, let's look at a key framework that supports these efforts, the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, or TNFD. TNFD helps companies assess and report their environmental impacts, making it easier for them to align with nature-positive goals. It's a crucial tool for integrating nature into financial reporting and management. So let's learn more.
Nature. It's the fresh water an oceans flow, the land we live on, and the atmosphere sustaining life. Nature's assets provide the flow of benefits, known as ecosystem services, that our communities and economies depend on. From the flow of fresh water to pollinating bees, the timber from forests, or the protection of mangroves, our prosperity is 100% dependent on nature. So as nature and biodiversity loss accelerate, so do the risks to businesses across all sectors and the providers of financial capital. By restoring and maintaining the resilience of ecosystems we depend on, we strengthen the resilience of businesses and capital portfolios. The TNFD has developed a set of recommendations and additional guidance to help organizations identify, assess and disclose their dependencies, impacts, risks and opportunities across the four realms of nature. Our 14 recommended disclosures build on the same 4 pillars of the TCFD, aligned with the goals and targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and consistent with the global reporting initiatives and the new Sustainability Reporting Global Baseline being developed by the ISSB. To help organizations identify and assess their nature-related issues and inform their disclosures, we have also developed a how-to assessment approach called LEAP, which has 4 phases. Locate your interface with nature, evaluate your impacts and dependencies, assess the most material risks and opportunities, and prepare to respond and report. To support a LEAP assessment, we have also provided a set of further guidance. It covers scenario analysis, engagement of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and affected stakeholders, sector and biome-specific guidance, and finally, we've recommended a set of metrics covering dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities to support assessment and disclosure. These include a wide set of metrics used to support a LEAP assessment and a subset for disclosure aligned with the TNFD recommendations. This approach recognizes that some disclosure metrics apply to all sectors, while others are sector-specific. Nature risk is in balance sheets, cash flows, and capital portfolios today. Most organizations have not had the tools to see and manage it like other risks. As nature loss continues to accelerate, so too do the costs of inaction. Investing in the resilience of nature is good for the resilience of business and finance, and a source of transformational new opportunities. As governments commit to a net zero, nature-positive future, it's time to get started. Visit tnfd.global to start using the TNFD recommendations and guidance today.
To dive deeper into TNFD, let's hear from Alessandra Melis, lead on standards and regulatory engagement at TNFD. She'll talk about the recent milestones on TNFD and share her thoughts on why accountability matters right now. My colleague Camilla will lead this discussion. So Camilla, over to you.
Hello everyone, it's wonderful to have you with us. As we learned from the recent video, TNFD is playing a pivotal role in reshaping how businesses interact with our natural world. This initiative helps companies across the globe to not only identify, but actively manage their impacts on nature. Today, we're lucky to have Alessandra Melis with us, who is at the forefront of these efforts at TNFD. Alessandra, thank you for joining us. Your work is helping to forge a crucial bridge between financial activities and environmental sustainability. So let's dive right in. Can you tell us more about TNFD and its importance in today's economy?
The Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures is a market-led, science-based, and government-backed initiative, providing corporates and financial institutions with the tools to act on their nature-related issues. The TNFD is market-based, as the task force is comprised of 40 senior executives drawn from leading financial institutions, corporates, and market service providers, with combined assets of over $20 trillion in US dollars. A group of over 1,400 organizations supports the task force as part of the TNFD forum, and over 416 institutions have committed to start disclosing according to the TNFD disclosures. The TNFD is also science-based, thanks to the extensive engagement of a range of world-leading science partners who have played a key role in grounding the TNFD in the best available science. 20 core knowledge partners from leading science bodies, framework providers, standard setters, and data bodies also support the work of the task force. We also say that the TNFD is government-based, as is government-backed, as when it was launched in June of 2021, it received the endorsement and the support of the G20 and of the G7, and it was included in the Sustainable Finance Roadmap of the G20's Sustainable Finance Working Group. The TNFD's mission is to support a shift in global financial flows away from nature negative and towards nature positive outcomes, aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework. These recommendations build on the concepts, the approach, and the architecture of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, and they are aligned with the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and specifically with Target 15, calling for businesses and finance to disclose their dependencies, risks, and impacts.
Thanks, Alessandra. What prompted this shift towards accountability now? Why is it so critical at this moment?
We could start by saying that every business and financial institution is now understanding that they have to deal with nature risk because it relates to their business now, considering that nature-related risk is financial risk. Together with this realization, we can also add that the global architecture of standards and regulation is now coming into place for nature-related issues alongside the one for climate. In fact, at a global policy level, we now have the Global Biodiversity Framework alongside the Paris Agreement. But we also have initiatives like the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures and the TNFD, providing disclosure recommendations, and other frameworks, such as the Science-Based Target Initiative and the Science-Based Target Network, which are doing the same for target setting. And we also have those global corporate reporting standards, such as the Global Reporting Initiative and the International Sustainability Standard Board, which are now influencing mandatory regulation. So there is now a clear set of global policy goals that are driving into corporate reporting requirements. So we now know that the global policy and regulatory architecture is in the agenda, but also investors are paying attention. The world's biggest investors are now starting to bring nature into their active ownership strategies and are in their stewardship guidelines, and are having more and more conversations with companies they provide capital or they lend to, since they are realizing that they have to deal with nature risk in their capital portfolio.
Absolutely. The integration of nature-related issues into financial decision-making is not just necessary, it's urgent. Looking ahead, Alessandra, how do you envision the success of TNFD's initiatives in the next 5 years?
Since the publication of its recommendations in September of 2023, the TNFD has now entered a new phase, which is primarily focused on scaling market adoption. The TNFD is doing so with 3 main priorities in mind. One is awareness, raising awareness about the importance of dealing with nature-related risks, but also on the TNFD recommendations. Capacity building, working with global partners all over the world to build market capabilities through a range of education, training, and data initiatives. But also data and further guidance, supporting adoption through the access of relevant tools and guidelines and data. A first successful milestone for the TNFD has been in January of 2024 at the World Economic Forum in Davos, when the TNFD announced a cohort of 320 organizations committed to disclose according to the TNFD recommendations by the financial year 2024 or 2025. A second cohort was announced in June of 2024, with an increase in the number of adopters by over 30%, reaching 416 TNFD adopters, coming from over 50 jurisdictions and equivalent to $6 trillion of US dollars in market capitalization. A third cohort of TNFD adopters will be announced at COP16 in Colombia this year. So each measure of success for the TNFD is related to the TNFD's mission, which is to encourage voluntary adoption of nature-related reporting by companies and financial institutions. And when this happens, and adoption of this voluntary reporting is made at large scale, this will ultimately result in better quality and more accessible data, allowing companies and capital providers to make better decisions, contributing to the shift in global financial flows towards nature-positive outcomes.
Thank you for sharing this perspective, Alessandra. It's clear that TNFD is not just about responding to current challenges, but also about anticipating future needs and opportunities. To our audience, if you have any questions for Alessandra, please feel free to type them in the chat and I'll pass them along. We're here to delve deeper into these crucial issues together. Back over to you, Kate.
Thanks, Alessandro, for your insights. Now, let's take a little break and connect with the sounds of the Anato flute, beautifully performed by Orlando Villarraga. After this musical interlude, we'll dive into upscaling investments for nature. Orlando Villarraga's flute performance beautifully connects us with nature. Now, let's talk about aligning financial flows with nature's needs. Finance Earth, an organization devoted to integrating financial strategies with environmental sustainability, is leading the way in ensuring that our investments support nature's recovery. Let's learn more about how they're making this happen.
We are in a nature and climate crisis. Across our world, we are seeing species and habitats being destroyed. It's absolutely critical that we mobilise private investment at huge scales to be able to protect and restore nature across our world. We make finance work for climate, conservation and communities, and we really do this in three main ways. First is to build the business models behind protecting and restoring nature and how to finance them. Second is to really help partners to build their capacity to help them get their projects investment ready for transactions. And finally is to help build the market. Here in the UK, we've had a long-term partnership with Surrey Wildlife Trust, helping them through their journey on investment readiness.
We need to scale up investment in nature recovery, and we've been working with Finance Earth to develop the financial models and the approaches that we can take to secure that investment. Our most recent project started in about 2020, enabling us to sell £1 million worth of biodiversity net gain credits on one of our sites.
As a FCA regulated corporate finance advisor and fund manager, we're uniquely placed to be able to help investors to really understand how to invest in nature and also really understand the right capital for the right projects and the right investors for that capital.
Finance Earth are uniquely placed, given their position working with both developers and NGOs to help structure investment solutions. We feel as a combination, we are in a tremendous position to then wrap that together in a product that allows clients to have an investment return, because ultimately they won't invest unless it is investable, but also delivers to the needs and the goals of which we are trying to aspire to.
We build the business models that help protect and restore nature, but also work out the right financing structures for those. And we help share that with the market. For us, it's really important that this isn't just about Finance Earth, that we really help to scale and share the solutions, because acting alone is just not enough. We've got to get to scale.
The next decade is crucial to halt and reverse the decline of nature. It is absolutely critical that we continue to build the pathways to enable investment into high-quality projects that place climate, nature and communities at the heart of solutions. We must act now.
Finance Earth is navigating a rapidly evolving landscape for nature markets, where the demand for impactful investments is growing. Let's now explore how nature markets are changing and the new trends that are shaping the future.
Nature markets are really at an inflection point. There's a greater recognition of the value of ecosystem services and the power of nature markets to drive more investment into nature. There's also a greater expectation of what nature markets can deliver, not just for the environment, but most importantly for the people, the communities that are living and working where these projects are taking place. One key change that we're seeing is real interest from corporates to get closer to the projects that they're investing in to deliver the sustainability commitments that they've made. That can mean more direct project finance instead of just buying credits or units on the spot market. It can also mean more directly engaging with the supply chain in order to deliver practice changes that will lead to both climate emissions reductions, but also biodiversity uplift and a wider set of both environmental and social outcomes. We're also seeing a greater willingness to pay for projects and an interest and willingness to work alongside communities and Indigenous peoples to really co-design projects to ensure that their rights and interests are respected. The lines between compliance and voluntary markets are really blurring, and that's ultimately a good thing. There's now regulation related to nature markets in more than 73 jurisdictions worldwide, and that's growing by the day. To shift the dial, we ultimately need regulation, and compliance markets can help to provide certainty that will really drive investment at the scale and pace that will far surpass what can be done with the voluntary markets. Developers and investors want to know that these markets are future-proof and that the impact that they're seeking to achieve is real and verifiable. Governments ultimately want to know what guardrails they need to put in place to deliver that impact. For these markets to really mature past their current adolescent stage, trust and collaboration between the various stakeholders is really important. At times, that requires an honest broker and a critical friend, which are both two roles that we're really privileged to play.
As we've seen, nature markets are reflecting a broader shift in how we value and protect the natural world. One significant development in this area is in the concept of legal personhood for nature, which acknowledges the rights of natural entities like rivers, forests, and wildlife. So let's explore this innovative approach through the example of whales and see how it could impact their protection and the markets involved.
Whale is suffering. Ship strikes, sonar testing, plastic pollution, or being caught in fish nets. We recognize now how invaluable the whales are to us. March 27, something incredible happened. Indigenous people of New Zealand, Tahiti, and the Cook Islands, the indigenous people who are the guardians of the ocean, took the reins in their hands and said, we are going to declare personhood on the whale.
Legal personhood for nature is a paradigm shift. It is a relational, ethical, and legal framework that recognizes natural entities such as rivers, forests, and whales as having certain rights and interests that deserve legal protection. Legal personhood for nature, or the rights of nature, exists in some shape or form in over 40 countries. Ultimately, legal personhood for whales is a step forward in recognizing the interconnectedness of all life on Earth and our responsibility to protect and coexist with other species.
Back in 2019, the Blue-Green Future team had valued some of the services of the whale at over $2 million. So now, if a whale is harmed, there's a legal and financial recourse that is possible, where whoever harms the whale is liable for over $2 million. The whales are going to feel now that they are protected. Maritime companies, by protecting the whales in the water, they are going to be rewarded for doing the right thing. They're going to be rewarded by the markets. They're going to find that their paper is cheaper than companies that do not protect the whales in the water. The whale is invaluable to humanity. Not only is it intrinsically invaluable, but it's through its life, it's providing these wonderful services to all of humanity.
There are tools for automated visual detection, detecting whales from infrared cameras from either the bows of ships or from shore in busy shipping lanes. Satellite images can also detect marine animals. So there's no excuse for us to not scale these solutions and make them available to people to solve these problems.
The market's going to look at the whale and say, you exist, what can I do for you? Can I provide you monitoring? Can I provide you with instrumentation that would keep the ships away from you, keep you away from harm? Companies that protect the whale in the water, they're going to find that their insurance premium is lower, and therefore they're viewed as a lower risk premium from the perspective of the capital markets. And the insurance companies are going to demand of the ships in the water to have better monitoring devices and anti-collision devices. Together, the markets and that declaration working together, hand in hand, to protect the whales.
It's clear that by incorporating ethical considerations into financial decisions, we can create powerful solutions that advance conservation efforts. Now, how can we measure our environment impact effectively? How can we know whether our investments are truly benefiting the environment? Let's see how the Accounting for Nature framework provides a reliable metric to ensure transparency and effectiveness in environmental conservation.
Governments, investors, consumers all over the world are wanting to know whether the projects they're investing in, the products they're buying, are contributing to a degradation of the environment, or perhaps a maintenance of the current condition of the environment, or perhaps even an improvement in the condition of the environment. But at the moment there are no metrics that allow them to know which of those three things is happening. And that's why Accounting for Nature and its metrics are so important.
Environmental accounting is important because it's a critical underpinning of a broader set of environmental economic accounts. Environmental economic accounting seeks to provide information about the environment in an economy in a coherent and systematic way so that the linkages between the environment and the economy can be understood.
The beauty about the Accounting for Nature framework is that it can track the performance of environmental management and changing condition over time at multiple scales.
I think increasingly people are now saying, well, what can I invest in that actually provides a benefit? Now that might be social, it might be environmental, they want a financial return, but what's the layer on top of it? And for us, we want to be able to show to them, yep, you invest with us, our investments are impact investments, and the impact we deliver, there's a big social impact, but there's a very large environmental impact, and we've got a framework that is independently audited, independently verified, that we can report our results to you. And that's a fundamental change in business operations, I think, in agricultural landscapes than anything we've been able to present over the last 20 years.
The Accounting for Nature framework is a world first, so it's globally significant. It provides a framework that gives us an understanding of the natural capital that exists within land, both at a landscape scale as well as a regional scale and at a global scale.
It provides a transparent scientific process that allows you to track the information systems and have those information systems fully audited. So when an environmental account is certified by Accounting for Nature, you can trust that the information in that account is true and accurate.
We proved it's practical to do, that we can actually measure the condition of a number of these environmental assets, that we can measure it in a scientifically robust way, and we believe that we can measure it in a way which is affordable.
A lot of private investors are interested in making a positive impact on the environment. And there are a lot of projects out there that claim to be making a positive impact on the environment. But how does an investor know? They need to invest in a project which is backed by metrics in which they can have confidence. And those are the metrics that Accounting for Nature has developed.
For more information on Accounting for Nature Limited and the Accounting for Nature framework, please log on to our website, accountingfornature.org.
Understanding and measuring our environmental impact is just part of the equation. To truly make a difference, we also need approaches that integrate finance and conservation efforts effectively. The next video introduces us to the Biodiversity Finance Initiative, or BioFin, a global effort by the United Nations Development Programme. BioFin is transforming how we invest in nature by creating comprehensive financial plans that drive sustainable solutions. Let's explore how BioFin is working to secure and enhance funding for nature-based projects.
Our planet, our home. It is a place of extraordinary beauty and remarkable diversity, from the tiniest microorganisms to the largest creatures ever to draw breath. Human life as we know it depends on them all. The value of nature to humankind is priceless, yet we have spent far too long taking without giving back, without protecting and preserving. The problem is not a lack of money. The world is richer than ever. The problem is making sure we spend the money in the right way, the smart way. That is why the Biodiversity Finance Initiative, or BioFin, exists. It is a global initiative of the United Nations Development Programme to demonstrate how the economy and the environment are inseparable. That finance can be a force for good. That we can cut poverty and secure long-term growth while still protecting our planet. This video will show you our process for creating biodiversity finance plans and how these plans unearth long-term solutions for nature-positive economies. BioFin is already at work in more than 40 countries around the globe, forging partnerships with national governments, local communities, and the private sector. BioFin is helping to identify and secure the finances needed to preserve the natural world. The start of any journey is knowing where to begin. A policy and institutional review establishes the existing conditions in a country, and it analyses what factors may be driving biodiversity loss, such as subsidies that are harming nature. The Biodiversity Expenditure Review. This can reveal the biodiversity investments already being made by governments, the private sector, and civil society in areas like agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. Next, the Financial Needs Assessment calculates the overall financial resources required to achieve biodiversity goals. Then, it identifies where funding shortfalls are limiting progress. Step 4 brings all this information together to create a biodiversity finance plan. This is a long-term comprehensive strategy to catalyse investments in nature and reduce harmful practices. These cover a mix of solutions, such as results-based budgeting, increasing revenue for protected areas, and repurposing of harmful subsidies. Four steps. Each builds on the last. Together, they form a roadmap to renewal. But there's a vital fifth step a country must take. Lasting change only happens when the ideas underpinning BioFin become embedded, when they become part of the fabric of government and the private sector. Through BioFin, we can drive the investment needed to protect the natural world and improve human well-being. We can create better jobs and opportunities, and we can secure a more sustainable future for us all. The health of our economy and our planet go hand in hand. It's time, for all our sakes, that they worked together.
BioFin highlights the critical links between finance and environmental conservation. To dive deeper into how finance and the private sector are evolving in their approach to nature, let's turn to Omar Sheikh from the Global Ethical Finance Initiative. We'll ask Omar to share his perspective related to nature and the future of integrating nature into financial strategies. Camilla, take it away.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Omar, thank you for joining us. To kick things off, could you shed some light on the latest trends you're seeing in how finance and the private sector are embracing nature and biodiversity?
A key trend we are seeing in relation to finance, nature, and the private sector is nature and biodiversity has finally made its way onto the agenda. Previously, the agenda for private sector and financial institutions is being focused very much on climate and climate-related risks and issues. Now, with the advent of TNFD and other global initiatives such as the Nature for Life Hub, awareness around the risks and challenges that nature and biodiversity loss pose to stock price, to supply chains, and to sectors, particularly such as agriculture, has become a lot more. Therefore, we are very happy to see, particularly since what we've been doing since 2018 together with UNDP, that now nature and biodiversity is being better understood and is on the agenda. Of course, it still remains particularly challenging as different parts of the world and different stages of the journey. Some are still grappling with the issues around climate. So to add nature and biodiversity can be challenging, but nonetheless, particularly around Europe and other jurisdictions, we're very happy to see that the issue is now very much on the agenda and it's accepted and realized as a key risk and a key issue that we must address alongside climate.
That's fascinating, Omar. It's great to see nature and biodiversity gaining momentum on the agenda. Given this shift, what role do you see for banks and private investment companies in accelerating action on nature?
So banks and private investment institutions are critical in an economy because they are in a unique position where they allocate the energy across an economy. They decide where finance and capital is deployed. And therefore, those sectors and those themes will naturally develop and grow faster. The finance world is dictated, of course, by regulation and compliance. So when compliance comes in, so issues such as TNFD or mandatory nature and biodiversity offsets in the construction world, that will force the finance and the private sector to move accordingly. So the role is absolutely critical to get the finance sector on board and to have private sector on board to accelerate deployment of capital into the nature and biodiversity space, but also for existing finance to understand that what they are financing, is it causing negative detriments and consequences on biodiversity loss, on species loss, and so on. And for the private sector world to realize the impact on supply chains and indeed the consequential impact on their own stock exchange of the potential, huge detrimental impacts of species loss, of biodiversity loss, and so on. So net, there's a critical role for banks and private sectors and a somewhat unique role for banks and private sector investment institutions in addressing the nature and biodiversity challenge.
That's a compelling view, Omar. Considering these dynamics, how have you seen the integration of nature considerations evolve over the past 5 years? And what changes do you anticipate in the near future?
There has been considerable positive progress in the last 5 years on this issue of nature and biodiversity. Indeed, since Jeffy and UNDP convened in Edinburgh in 2018, we've seen improvements and progress across three dynamics. Firstly, around awareness, secondly, around commitments, and third, around investment. Awareness and advocacy, there's definitely been an increased push towards understanding this issue as a commercial risk, but also understanding nature and biodiversity as an opportunity, be that an investment opportunity as nature-based solutions for climate, or be that investment opportunities in sustainable agriculture. That has been coupled with commitments and, as I said, investments as well. However, there are challenges that we're not really seeing sufficient amount of investment come through in this space. And there's also challenges around really understanding how this works. Does investing in nature and biodiversity, does it mean it's a story of credits, like we have nature and biodiversity credits similar to carbon credits? Or is it a story of investing in sustainable agri? Or is it a story of investing in tech firms around the satellite data that helps us to capture and manage and measure nature and biodiversity loss and indeed preservation or restoration? So challenges remain, but we see it very exciting progress has happened in the last 5 years. Going forward, where do we see the next 5 years? Definitely around increased understanding, increased implementation. That will move towards standardization. Technology, of course, will play a role in these global frameworks, will play a role. And hopefully the integration of the nature and biodiversity agenda with the climate agenda into a holistic, singular approach for private sector institutions when dealing with all things environment related.
Thanks for your insights, Omar. It's inspiring to hear about the progress being made and the challenges ahead in integrating nature considerations into finance. For everyone joining us, if you have any questions about this important topic, feel free to type them in the chat and I'll make sure to pass them on to Omar. And now, I'll hand it over to Kate. Kate, over to you.
Thank you for sharing your insights, Omar. Now let's take a break and experience the power of nature through the words of George the poet. His spoken word performance will remind us of our deep connection to nature and the urgent need for change.
I am the natural world. It serves my needs, my words, my deeds. I'm a part of nature, like the birds and bees, like the ferns, the seeds, the dirt, the trees. We complement each other perfectly, giving each other balance and certainty. Just look around, there's life everywhere. The sky, the earth, the sea. Ain't it crazy how we're connected? Don't you think it's cool how we're linked? The one thing we all have in common is life. Let's not fall out of sync. Let's celebrate nature in our day-to-day, at home, at work, and how we talk, how we think. It starts with recognizing we're part of it all. Nature's reaching out. Let's answer the call.
Thank you, George, for your incredibly powerful message. Now that we've explored the role of the private sector in advancing nature-positive finance, let's shift our focus to the public sector. We'll talk about the way that governments can manage public funds to drive a nature-positive economy. To start, let's examine the urgent need for a big nature turnaround in public finance.
Nature is a critical ally in the fight against climate change and biodiversity loss. UNEP's State of Finance for Nature tracks finance flows to nature-based solutions and investment needs. For the first time, this year's report estimates finances for activities that directly harm nature from both private and public sectors and compares it to finance going to nature-based solutions. A staggering almost $7 trillion were pumped into activities with a direct negative impact on nature in 2022. The private sector is responsible for much of this, at $5 trillion. That's 140 times larger than private finance flows to nature-based solutions. Around 43% of private nature-negative finance flows through 5 industries: construction, electric utilities, real estate, oil and gas, and food and tobacco. The remaining $1.7 trillion is spent by governments on subsidies that harm nature. That's 10 times more finance than they're putting into nature-based solutions. Meanwhile, nature-based solutions remain dramatically underfunded at $200 billion per year. To meet climate, biodiversity, and restoration targets, this needs to triple by 2030. Urgent action is needed from governments, businesses, and finance to repurpose nature-negative finance flows into nature-positive activities. Scaling investment in nature-based solutions would allow to cost-effectively use nature to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss.
We know that a shift in public finance can drive a nature-positive economy. Now let's take a closer look at a critical aspect of this shift: the impact of harmful subsidies. Every year, billions are spent on subsidies that contribute to ecosystem destruction, undermining the livelihoods and resilience of communities who depend on them, and species extinction. Let's explore some examples of how reforming these supports can create a more sustainable world.
Every year, billions of dollars are spent on subsidies that are driving the destruction of our ecosystems and pushing species to extinction. These harmful subsidies promote practices that wipe away our forests, pollute the air we breathe, and leave our oceans depleted. The subsidies come in many shapes, such as tax breaks, direct payments, or other government supports for sectors including transport, energy, water, and construction. They often target socio-economic goals. But this assistance can create unintended harm to the natural world. Now, nations are waking up to how this public money is bankrolling our own extinction and the urgent need to reform and remove harmful subsidies for the sake of our planet and people. The OECD estimate that $391 billion in subsidies and other government support to agriculture contribute to biodiversity loss through the expansion and intensification of production. These practices are not just harming the environment, but humans too. Harmful subsidies channeled towards the fishing industry are estimated at $35 billion per year through tax preferences and income support, causing pollution and overfishing. And the fossil fuel sector continues to receive significant subsidies. For G20 countries, production and consumption subsidies average over $600 billion per year. Harmful subsidies are not exclusive to these industries. In fact, many subsidies are country-specific. So it lies with each nation to recognize what these unique subsidies are and ask how they can be reduced or redesigned without impacting economies, even strengthening them, while meeting SDG targets. We can preserve biodiversity while driving economic development and supporting the most vulnerable groups. In 2013, coffee production in Vietnam was characterized by overexpansion. So the government established a program that gave farmers access to credit, with conditions to incentivize greener farming practices among coffee growers. These conditions included training in green production and planting on suitable land. Rather than harming production, participating coffee farms saw their profits increase by an average of 23%. At the turn of the millennium, direct payments to farmers in Switzerland had been conditional on good environmental practices, but ecological targets were not being met. The Swiss government reformed its agricultural payments policy, but with a system of transitional payments to make the reform socially and politically viable. The quality of biodiversity ecological compensation areas have increased significantly. The leading cause for the substantial loss of wetlands in Austria has been their conversion to cropland for agriculture. To counteract the loss of biodiversity, subsidies for the drainage of wetlands for agricultural cultivation were removed, resulting in net gains for biodiversity and ecosystems that benefit people. Economic incentives, information dissemination, and compensation were critical to success. Such case studies provide new perspectives on the repurposing of harmful subsidies. But changes to the subsidy system can't happen overnight. Long-term results can only be achieved through an integrated analysis of environmental, economic, nutritional, and social objectives that require political support from various stakeholders. Balancing a reduction of biodiversity impacts with short-term productivity loss and related social impact, especially in developing countries, is a major challenge. In many cases, a nature-positive incentive may be needed for the transition period to support vulnerable socio-economic groups. Unless significant action is taken, these harmful subsidies may ultimately outdo our efforts to tackle the global biodiversity and climate crises. Our biodiverse world depends on reforming and reducing these harmful supports. This is the nature of subsidies.
As we consider the shift in public finance towards supporting nature, let's turn our attention to practical solutions already in action. The UK government's Nature Transition Support Programme is working with Colombia, Ecuador, and Ghana to align economic activities with nature's needs. Let's hear more about this initiative and its impact in Ecuador.
Hello, and welcome to this introduction to the UK government-funded Nature Transition Support Programme, or NTSP for short. The NTSP was originally inspired by the Dasgupta Review of the Economics of Biodiversity, and it builds on the growing weight of evidence since then that mainstream economic development paths, while delivering a range of benefits, are also driving declines in the state of nature, which in turn are resulting in growing negative feedbacks and risks to economic growth and financial stability. The NTSP works with partner governments to understand their needs and to help generate evidence that will support decision-making at the nexus of the economy and nature. That could mean helping to understand where economic activities are dependent on nature, or where economic progress and people's livelihoods are likely to be limited as a result of biodiversity loss, as well as where the opportunities lie to realign policies and to invest in nature to stimulate development that delivers for people and reinforces rather than erodes the economy's ecological foundations. The programme's currently active in Colombia, Ecuador and Ghana. So now let's hear from our partners in Ecuador.
Ecuador es un país megadiverso, reconocido como uno de los 17 países más ricos en biodiversidad a nivel mundial. Su importancia está reflejada en la Constitución de la República de 2008 y se considera un sector estratégico del Estado. Nuestro país ha expresado su voluntad de continuar en la dirección hacia la sostenibilidad a través de la implementación de mecanismos de conservación y desarrollo sostenible. Sin embargo, el modelo de producción actual impacta parcialmente de forma negativa al ambiente y por ende se pone en riesgo los sistemas de soporte de vida de los cuales dependemos como sociedad. La sostenibilidad, abordada como un principio rector de la planificación para el desarrollo del país, es recogida en el Plan Nacional de Desarrollo 2024-2025 en el eje de infraestructura, energía y medio ambiente, con una visión estratégica como vía para el desarrollo socioeconómico del Ecuador, que tiene trascendencia y magnitud decisiva en lo económico, social, productivo y ambiental, considerando las actividades en temas de energía, conectividad y medio ambiente se encuentran interrelacionadas. Por otra parte, en Ecuador se ha emprendido el esfuerzo para actualizar la contabilidad ambiental, una herramienta para integrar los beneficios y costos asociados a los recursos naturales con el objetivo de ajustar indicadores macroeconómicos fundamentales y brindar información para la toma de decisiones en las políticas de desarrollo. En este contexto, el Nature Transition Support Program apoya al país a desarrollar análisis de alineación de políticas públicas que, complementadas con análisis económicos, contribuyen a los procesos nacionales hacia una economía positiva con la naturaleza. Los modelos basados en el uso del suelo, condiciones ambientales, servicios ecosistémicos, patrones de oferta y demanda de sectores económicos y demás información nacional y global permiten tener aproximaciones de impactos y dependencias entre las actividades económicas y biodiversidad en el Ecuador. Además, permite tener proxies de pronósticos del Producto Interno Bruto en el país, tomando en cuenta el impacto de la degradación de los ecosistemas. Estos primeros ejercicios representan una oportunidad para el país de contar con una línea base para el desarrollo de futuros estudios en el corto plazo que permitan profundizar en el contexto nacional. Adicionalmente, el Nature Transition Support Program ha reunido a diferentes actores del gobierno, el Ministerio de Ambiente, Agua y Transición Ecológica, el Ministerio de Economía y Finanzas, la Secretaría Nacional de Planificación, el Banco Central del Ecuador y expertos nacionales en la temática, y ha brindado el espacio de discusión para coadyuvar a los procesos nacionales actuales en el marco de la transición económica y ecológica y contribuir a la visión de sostenibilidad del país. Finalmente, como institución pública, queremos resaltar el interés y el compromiso del país a construir juntos una vía que hace compatible la protección de la biodiversidad con el desarrollo económico para el futuro de los ecuatorianos y del planeta.
Now that we've had a chance to learn about what it takes to shift an economy nature positive, let's hear from Alex White, who was instrumental in supporting countries like Ecuador and Ghana as they transition towards nature positive economies. After Alex's insights, we'll hear from Raymond Ohene Ofori, Deputy Director of the Environment Directorate at the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation in Ghana. He'll explain how the country is aligning its economic activities with nature. Camila, take it away.
Thanks, Kate. We've invited Alex to share his insights on why transitioning to a nature-positive economy is so crucial for the UK. As we go through this conversation, feel free to type your questions in the chat and I'll make sure to pass them along to Alex. So Alex, let's dive in. Why is economic transformation to a nature-positive future an important issue for the UK?
Well, not only does the UK support a range of international measures that support the transition to a nature-positive economy, including the 10-point plan for nature and the Global Biodiversity Framework, but also the Discovery Review, that was a report independently commissioned by Treasury in the UK, highlighted the fact that our economies are dependent on nature and the biodiversity that underpins it. And that really has brought home the fact that whilst different types of capital, human capital, produced capital, have increased over time, natural capital has declined. And that's an unsustainable way of economic growth. It also highlighted the fact that there is a sort of an impact imbalance, that there is a different perspective on supply and demand, which is also unsustainable. So in the government's response to the Discovery Review, we committed to a nature positive future, to ensure that the environment is better than we find it, and that we reverse global biodiversity loss by 2030. Also, from a practical perspective, the UK's economy is bound to healthy ecosystem biodiversity. A recent study indicated that by 2030, UK GDP could be 6 to 12% lower than it otherwise would be due to ecosystem degradation. So all these things really highlight the fact that healthy ecosystems, biodiversity, is important not only to the UK, but also globally, and the UK's role globally.
That's a comprehensive response, Alex. Your insights highlight how deeply intertwined our economic future is with the health of our ecosystems. Now, many of our viewers might be wondering, what are some of the barriers and successes in shifting national economies towards this nature-positive model?
I think addressing the barriers first. There are lots of technical things that are preventing an effective and speedy transition. One is around data transmission. There's a huge amount of data out there, but it's not necessarily being used in the most effective way. This also combines with vertical and horizontal integration within decision-making frameworks. So whether that's across ministries and departments, or working down in terms of spatial size from national to regional to local, is the data that's being produced being used in the best way to integrate nature in decision-making. The final one really is on investment and finance. We all know there's a huge finance gap.
there are a range of obstacles to that being achieved, which is a session in its own. But I'd probably focus on areas around sort of transparency and developing effective rates of return for investments in nature to make that more attractive to investors. Successes, I mean, the last few years have been a range of policy successes. You look at the GBF and the 10-point plan for nature. We're sort of raising ambition for reversing biodiversity loss, but also some countries are coming forward with really interesting approaches on ecological transition, planning for sort of ongoing legacy for a constant transition to a positive economy. There are also really interesting finance mechanisms being developed as well, whether it's innovative bonds or insurance approaches, etc. And I think the fact that governments are beginning to really grapple with what a transition looks like, I think for me feels like a success in itself, and it's moving things forward. So, country governments realizing that growth is dependent on healthy biodiversity, but grappling with how to create a resilient economy whilst also ensuring that there are healthy ecosystems.
Those points really illuminate the multifaceted challenges we face in transitioning to a nature-positive economy. I appreciate how you emphasize the role of data integration and the necessity of transparency in financing. Those are critical to bridging the gap between policy and practice. Now, looking into the future, what does success look like 10 years from now when it comes to national economies and nature?
I think that's a very interesting and challenging question. There are a range of ways we can measure success that are set up in the GBF and 10-point plan for nature. But there's also a sort of a wider picture of transition to nature positive and looking at resilient economies, and lots of things tied up in that in terms of how we measure wealth, how do we measure growth, what does it mean to embed economy within nature, rather than when we talk about mainstreaming, are we factoring in these things during the process of making a decision, but are they beginning to weight in that process? And if we look at what the description review says about the importance of nature, then we really need to be saying, okay, well, in all respects, what is the impact of the system on nature? Because if we don't look after it, then we know that it will affect our economic growth.
Given that context, Alex, as we look ahead, do you foresee all sectors like transport, energy, and food security embracing this shift towards a nature-positive economy? And what would that process look like?
I don't expect in 10 years' time for all the problems to be solved. But I would hope that, going back to another point, that we are all grappling with this transition issue. I think, what does that actually mean for a range of sectors? So not just for forestry and conservation, but what does it mean for transport? What does it mean for education? What does it mean for energy? What does it mean for food security? All these things are very wrapped up in their contribution to and their ability to help us with a successful economic transition. So whether we get there, I don't know, but hopefully the work that the UK government is supporting and UNDP are helping to deliver will help us get there.
Thank you, Alex, for such a detailed and insightful perspective on how the UK is navigating its path toward a nature-positive economy. Now, let's take a closer look at Ghana. We're excited to have Raymond Ohini-Ofori, Deputy Director of the Environment Directorate at the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation with us today. Raymond, thank you for being here. To start, could you tell us what the concept of nature positive means for Ghana's economy?
Okay, so nature positive refers to an approach to economic development that not only minimizes the harm to Ghana and the rest of Africa and the world's environment, but also actively contributes to the restoration and regeneration of natural ecosystems. And this is also evident in Ghana's participation in the GBF processes. For Ghana's economy, adopting a nature positive strategy would mean aligning our economic growth with in environmental sustainable ways. That improves our biodiversity and reduces our environmental degradation and contribution to long-term resilience. This approach promises a future where our economy will thrive in harmony with nature, which also means that the nature of our environment is sustainable to the livelihoods of our people, which means that it supports building the environment for people, their clean drinking waters, the environment. The environment is thriving because there are trees, the forest reserves are enhanced, the wildlife and biodiversity is intact, and all of them thrive in harmony with society. Again, nature positivity also means that we are engaging agriculture in sustainable ways, which does not unnecessarily damage the environment.
Thanks, Raymond. It's inspiring to hear how Ghana is embracing nature-positive strategies that go beyond minimizing harm, actively contributed to the restoration of ecosystems. Now, you've touched on some of the elements in Ghana's strategy, but what would you say are the main levers of change that could nudge Ghana's economy farther towards its nature-positive model?
So, the levers of change, of course, begins with governments in harmony with the people across multiple sectors, which does include agriculture, mining and natural resources, but also to a large extent tourism and conservation, which is a very big part of the economy of Ghana. Agriculture, in particular, the practice of slash and burn, and the transformation of large forest areas into producing of monocrops, and then those activities do drive away a lot of wildlife that were inhabiting the forest areas. But just as well, this practice also reduces the land space and landmarks for other biodiversity resources. Mining also, and the mining of gold and natural resources in Ghana's economy, which, of course, Ghana is heavily dependent on gold, bauxite, and etc. of these of its natural resources. This pollution through mining of our natural resources does also impact the environment. It prevents us from actually taking advantage of the water that is provided on land, but also it also prevents the fishermen, and then also the fish from thriving in the oceans and also in freshwater habitat bodies. I spoke about the tourism and conservation. A nature positive economy, in fact, will prioritize protecting and restoring these ecosystems in order to make them pristine and enviable for tourists to also take advantage of. And these tourists would also bring foreign exchange to show up the reserves of Ghana and also improve the economy for Ghanaians. Climate change mitigation, although climate impacts and its contributes to a nature positive environment, we are attempting to use climate change resources to also improve, have a co-mitigation for both climate and biodiversity. What this means is that whilst we preserve forests and water areas, to sequester and also be able to sell carbon, we are also preserving these resources for and for our transition to a nature positive economy. So this also is a win-win situation for both economic and nature as well as our environment.
Thank you, Raymond, for walking us through the critical shifts Ghana is working on. From sustainable mining practices to leveraging tourism, it's clear that Ghana is taking a comprehensive approach to protect biodiversity while driving economic growth. We wish you the best of luck in this important work. To everyone watching us today, please don't forget to drop your questions in the chat. We'll be passing them along to Alex and Raymond. Back to you, Kate.
We've examined some of the complexities of transitioning to a nature-positive economy and explored the barriers and some successes along the way. To give us a brief interlude, let's enjoy this performance by Joanna Tecuna, the extraordinary indigenous singer from the Amazons. When we come back, we'll dive into an important topic: how we can ensure indigenous peoples and local communities receive the financial support they need to continue their essential work protecting and restoring nature. Stay tuned. Welcome back. When we talk about action on nature and climate, women and men of indigenous and local communities are at the forefront, yet they receive only a tiny fraction of funding for both. Let's see how governments and donors are stepping up, ensuring that indigenous peoples and local communities get the resources they need for their essential work protecting, stewarding, and restoring nature.
Los pueblos indígenas amazónicos enfrentan la falta de acceso directo a financiamento, lo que complica su autonomía y la protección de la selva amazónica.
Eu acho que é um consenso geral, né? Não é só um consenso da Amazônia brasileira. Eu acho que de toda a Amazônia sul-americana, né? Dos 9 países que compõem a Amazônia, estão buscando essa independência, né? Que é criar mecanismo para a captação de recursos internacionais e recursos nacionais para atender ali a demanda dos povos indígenas da Amazônia local, né?
El objetivo de este proyecto es co-crear un modelo de financiamiento sostenible desde la visión de los pueblos indígenas amazónicos a través del ejercicio de la conservación inclusiva.
Tenemos capacidad de manejar nuestro pueblo y nuestra organización, y por eso es muy importante este rol de gobernanza en nuestro territorio.
Asegurar el financiamiento directo a los pueblos indígenas es clave para el bienestar de las comunidades y de la Amazonía. Esto apoyará a la meta de conservación del 80% de los bosques, humedales y ríos de la región amazónica, lo que evitaría alcanzar el punto de no retorno.
Pues siempre se hace necesario un fondo de cooperación para todas las iniciativas que tenemos dentro de los territorios y para que estas mismas lleguen el 70% al menos para las comunidades.
Y otras instituciones que nos quieren apoyar, estas instituciones pues que nos ayuden para poder también fortalecer, ¿no? a las comunidades.
Las organizaciones indígenas de la Amazonía trabajan de la mano con WWF desde hace más de una década. Este proyecto forma parte de nuestros esfuerzos regionales por proteger los territorios indígenas, fortalecer la gobernanza indígena y dinamizar las economías indígenas.
Indigenous people and local communities play an integral role in catalyzing climate action. Recognizing the role that indigenous peoples and local communities play in climate action, the UNDP Kenya is providing direct access grants to enhance their participation in implementing the nationally determined contributions (NDCs). These funds empower grantee communities through direct access grants for governance, adaptation support, mitigation projects such as reforestation, facilitating knowledge sharing. Paran Women's Group is one of the UNDP Climate Promise grantees based in Kenya's Narok County. The organization has 3,000 members in 64 women's groups who are working on environmental conservation and empowering indigenous women. The group is producing energy-efficient briquettes and cook stoves made from locally available material. Paran has facilitated community dialogue sessions to raise awareness on tree planting. They have also trained the women's groups and established 12 tree nurseries.
Hii kazi ya miti tunaona tunaendelea vizuri. Tumeona hali ya anga sio mbaya kwa ajili tumeanza hii kazi ya miti. Sasa hii miti tumeona anasaidia sisi. Sababu tumeona hata kwa watoto wa shule tukiuza tutaweza pata pesa ya watoto. Hatuwezi hangaika.
Through the dialogue sessions, the community members identified indigenous trees and vegetables that should be conserved. The women also used trees to source for components of indigenous medicine, conserving traditional knowledge.
Tunaendelea kupanda miti na hiyo miti anasaidia sisi kwa madawa, kwa ajili tunapanda, unatoa hiyo dawa unapatia watoto. Saa ile unaona mtoto ameshikwa na homa ataweza kushindika kwa hospitali, ninapatia na anapona. Kina mama, unajua kina mama nasikia mgonjwa kwa tumbo, kiuno, ni wapi, ulcers, iko hiyo dawa na ninapatia na amesaidia sana.
As a result of these initiatives, the women have been able to improve their livelihoods and benefited in various ways.
Wakati barani walikuja, walitufunza, ndio tukaanza kupanda mboga. Saa hii kila mama hakuna mwenye anaenda kuomba mwingine mboga. Saa hiyo ndio maendeleo mzuri. Wasee wamefurahia nyumbani na tuko na watoto kwa nyumbani. Saa hii ukiambia mtoto ukiingia shamba, toa mboga, anafurahia. Juu hachoki kwenda kutafuta. Tulishukuru sana.
Tumefaidika kwa sababu hatuko idle. Kila saa kazi unafanya, umejitolea, umejiandika kujiajiri. Hakuna kuomba tena. So tunashukuru sana kwa Mama Lucy, Mama Betty, wametuelekeza. Tunashukuru na Mungu awabariki sana.
Limited access to water, especially during the dry season, is a key challenge the women face.
Shida moja ni maji. Saa hii tunafurahi kwa sababu inanyesha. Wakati wa kiangazi tunapata shida sana kwa sababu tunaenda mtoni na mto ni mbali. Na tumechimba vizima na hiyo vizima naenda inakauka. So inatubidi tuende mtoni. Na mtoni ni mbali karibu kilomita karibu 20. Kwenda na kurudi 3 hours.
Hata hii government yetu hapa nini ya Narok. Ya Narok si bado wanafanya mambo ya kupanda miti.
Tree planting activities bring the community together, providing opportunities to enhance women's rights and engagement with local government.
How does direct financing of these efforts actually work in practice? To gain a better understanding, let's hear from Nina Kentcheva from the United Nations Development Program and Alonso Cordova from the Worldwide Fund for Nature. For those of you with questions, please remember to add them into the chat. We'll be sure to pass them to the speakers. Camilla, over to you.
Hello again, everyone. It's great to have you with us today as we delve into a crucial aspect of conservation: direct financing for Indigenous peoples and local communities. Today, we have two experts joining us. Let's start with you, Nina. UNDP has been at the forefront of supporting these communities globally. Could you share with us what UNDP is currently doing to facilitate direct financing to Indigenous peoples and local communities?
Indigenous peoples and local communities are the best guardians of forests and other ecosystems. And they have been coming to the global level demanding that direct financing reaches them so they can continue providing this essential service to all of humanity. What is UNDP doing in this area? One is that we have been supporting Indigenous peoples and local communities through the Small Grants Program, which delivers funds from the Global Environment Facility directly to the ground. Another is channeling funds from bilaterals from governments such as the United Kingdom that are committed to supporting climate action on the ground. Third, the Equator Prize identifies best practice at the Indigenous peoples and local community level, and we support them through the Equator Prize as well. Another area of work is on the policy level to make sure that funds are tracked and we know where and how much funds are reaching communities directly. On this, we're working with a variety of partners to make sure that OECD and others have specific indicators that can help us quantify exactly how much funds are going to Indigenous communities because we know that it is not sufficient at this moment. And third, we're working with stakeholders such as private sector and philanthropies to make sure that there are innovative and various models through which Indigenous peoples' conservation, Indigenous-led conservation can be supported directly.
That's quite comprehensive, Nina. It's clear that UNDP is deeply invested in empowering these guardians of our ecosystems. Why is this issue so crucial for UNDP?
This issue is very important to UNDP for several different reasons. One of these reasons is the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals, which are part of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, are our guiding star. And they also include a very important commitment, a concept called Leave No One Behind. This is the commitment to eradicate poverty and inequality for the benefit of all. Another reason is because Indigenous peoples are core and the respect to their rights are essential for the achievement of the goals of the Rio Conventions, which have to do with climate change, biodiversity, and endings and dealing with desertification. There's a few provisions there that have to do with respecting the rights of Indigenous peoples, and we won't achieve those goals without the full and effective engagement of Indigenous peoples and their support to their rights, protection of their rights. Finally, I want to mention the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is also very important and which outlines how the UN and other stakeholders can implement the rights of Indigenous peoples and protect these rights, such as self-determination, the right to free, prior, and informed consent, and so on. I welcome you to familiarize yourselves with these documents.
It's inspiring to see such dedication to not just supporting, but also ensuring these communities are central to the conservation of biodiversity. Nina, looking forward, what are your hopes for the expansion of these financing efforts over the next 5 years?
What do I see in 5 years when I think about Indigenous peoples, local communities, and direct financing? I see a much, much greater amount of funds reaching communities directly. There are already a lot of Indigenous-led funds at the global, at the regional, and national levels that are functioning, that are demonstrating that Indigenous peoples have the capacity and the ability to manage funds. We can continue to provide in that capacity where it's needed, but I see that in 5 years we could do a much better job in ensuring that Indigenous peoples are seen and respected as the partners in development, which they are, not the beneficiaries, and that many, many more sources and kinds of funds are flowing to Indigenous communities so they are well supported to do the work that they do on behalf of all of us. I see that we will find more innovative ways to channel these funds and to generate funds through private sector entities, through philanthropies, and through other actors. But I see Indigenous peoples, local communities, Afro-descendant communities, pastoralists, fisherfolk being much better resourced to do the work that they're doing on behalf of all of us.
Thank you, Nina, for highlighting the trajectory towards more robust and inclusive financing models. Now turning to you, Alonso. WWF has been a key player in direct financing initiatives for Indigenous peoples. Can you tell us about your current projects and how they are tailored to support these communities effectively?
WWF is progressing in terms of direct funding for Indigenous populations. We have been, one, following the strengthening of those capacities to manage funds. We require a technical team that is trained in the Indigenous organizations and also in the territory, in the communities, to fulfill certain standards or the standards of the cooperation of the funding sources. WWF is transmitting this knowledge so the Indigenous populations can manage the funds in a simple manner. Two, the experiences on the field taken to the application of the projects. We have shared the experiences with the corporation and also with the state of the reality of the field and how this adaptive management should be implemented. So these requests adapt to the local context and to the reality that they are facing, including the threats to their territory. So they are taken into account in a way that this generates an opportunity for indigenous populations and the representatives in the management of the funds. Also, we are leading projects as Saemedesahueto in Peru that implements direct actions in the field through the indigenous organizations, being them the implementers, the protagonists, next to a series of allies and organizations that allowed to have a different vision of how governance in the indigenous populations is key for the management of the funds and the management of the actions and projects. Lastly, we are developing a funding model focalized and sustainable between Peru, Colombia, and Brazil that is focused on indigenous populations, allowing them to fulfill their national and regional agendas.
That sounds like a powerful approach, and also, could you highlight some of the successes you've experienced as well as the challenges you face in these initiatives?
In this process of follow-up to the indigenous organizations, the WWF at the national level, at the international level, as in Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, and especially in Peru, we have co-created processes. And these processes are at the same time they have this decentralized vision. I think that has been one important element of success to co-create together, to co-create the funding and direct access model for indigenous populations, even though we are still at the feasibility level and the analysis per se. To generate a space for governance has allowed us to provide sustainability to a process that is a long term and where decision making needs to be balanced and that it includes others in the organization, in the technical aspects, but also in the leading levels, especially women. In that way, we can create technical committees, men, women, young people with this intersectional scope is super important. And to generate these spaces, diverse spaces, make this more efficient and resilient to change. WWF, indigenous populations are allies. And around the funds that they execute, it's important. There is no, we don't look at them as beneficiaries, but we look at them as allies. And that makes that both parties are involved in a better manner. That allows also for empowerment in the different projects. It is a construction where they are the protagonists and they both benefit from it.
Alonso, with the progress and the challenges in mind, what does success look like for WWF's initiatives in this area over the next 5 years?
Vemos en los próximos 5 años. So in the next 5 years, we see models that are mature, funding and direct access models that are adapted to the needs of the indigenous organizations and the representatives and leaders, but also the communities in the land, or indigenous organizations that are closer to their communities with funds that are adapted to their local realities. Also, in 5 years, we see accountability mechanisms that are easy to implement. We need to be accountable for without generating more work for the people that are already preserving nature, embedding for culture, and developing their own ways of government or territorial government. So I see women accessing to funds to contribute to their communities, women that are becoming entrepreneurs and that they are collaborating with the development of their communities. That is very important. There are key examples. In Peru, for example, the Indigenous Fund for Women provides direct access to women so they can execute funds in the territory. WWF also will be working with these organizations with a different role, a more accompaniment role, or follow-up role, and also supporting the leaders in the territory to access in a better manner or to access these funds. And this is what the partners require at this point. Also, in 5 years, I hope we are able to identify solutions to the gaps that make conservation difficult. If we don't take into account health, education, and basic services of the communities that live in these areas, we will lose opportunities to preserve biodiversity and to keep biodiversity and to reduce these issues that are affecting the territory. The big threats to the territory cannot be taken lightly, especially when they're related to health, education, and social aspects.
Thank you for sharing these insights, Alonso. To our viewers, if you have questions for Nina or Alonso, please share them in the chat. We're eager to facilitate a deeper understanding of these crucial issues. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you, Nina and Alonso, for your insightful contributions on direct financing for Indigenous peoples and local communities. On this important note, we're wrapping up today's program. Join us tomorrow as we explore restoring balance, reimagining our relationship with nature. We'll talk about recalibrating our connection with the environment and envisioning a more harmonious and equitable future. Don't miss it. In the meantime, participate in our social media campaign. Create a short video responding to our prompt, "If we reimagine our relationship with nature, we can create a world where..." What do you think? Post your video on Instagram and tag #NatureForLife and #ReimagineOurFuture. We're eager to see your creative and inspiring responses. We'd like to leave you now with the powerful rhythms of Arandu Aracua, an Indigenous Brazilian band whose performance is rooted in tradition and connection with the environment. We hope this performance leaves you inspired. Thank you for joining us today, and see you tomorrow.